Could Adam and Eve ever have learned the difference between good and evil had they not eaten of the tree of knowledge, good and evil? Did they gain the knowledge by actually eating the fruit, or by the very act of disobedience? Did they gain this knowledge through that means? No. It wasn't by the fruit, tasting the fruit itself, or from the act of disobedience that gave them this knowledge. This fruit wasn't some magical fruit that hung upon a tree. No, it came from two completely different means. It came from the fact that the tree even existed in the first place, and by the fact that God said not to eat of it. This is where they gained the knowledge. The tree was an object upon which they could exercise their free will. It awakened in them a higher level of consciousness, their moral abilities. In Genesis 3:6, we read, "And when the woman saw the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eye, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave unto her husband with her, and he did eat." One side note here in this verse that I want to mention. Often we think about Adam or Eve having eaten the fruit, having been tempted by the serpent and fallen prey to his temptations, and have eaten the fruit, and then went off and enticed Adam, who was somewhere else in the garden at the time, to also eat of the fruit. But here it says, "and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat." It would indicate that he was really right there the whole time that she was having this conversation, and it wasn't somewhere else innocently minding his own business somewhere else in the garden. But anyway, note that it says that that it was pleasant to the eyes. Notice that she saw that the fruit was pleasant to the eyes. Now, we understand this attraction, this comeliness attraction. We see this in ourselves today. The fact that we like a particular car, or we like particular flowers, or even our mates, we are attracted to them by their appearance and by the pleasing to the eye, at least initially. So, we can see that it would have been pleasant to the eye and desirable that way. But notice it also says in this verse, that is Genesis 3:6, it says, "and a tree to be desired to make one wise." How does such a tree show us that it would make us wise? How could she look at this tree and see that it would make her wise? How did she get this idea, or did they get this idea? Did God tell them this? No. Actually, if you'll go to Genesis 2:17, it reads, "But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die." Does that sound like a tree that would bring wisdom? Would it be wise if we ate of such a fruit when God said, "You will surely die"? No. So where did this idea come from? Well, it comes from Genesis 3:5. It came from the serpent. "For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be as gods, knowing good and evil. That is where they get the idea, is where the idea comes from. They switched their obedience, their reliance from God to the serpents. From God, who said, "You will surely die," to the serpent who said, "You will not surely die," in verse 4. "You will be like gods," in verse 5. But the serpent was right when he said that your eyes will be opened, because it surely were. They learned what it meant to be deceived, and what it meant to disobey God, what it meant to be separated from the source of life itself. They learned what it would be like to live without God, and how hard life would be without God. They learned of toil and strife, hardship and suffering. The truth of the matter is that it was a lie when he said that, when the serpent says that you'll become like gods, that you will gain knowledge. They already had all the knowledge that they needed. They had all the knowledge that was promised by the serpent. They knew God. They were one with God. They had eternal life with God. God was their creator, and they were creators themselves. They could create living birth, like through the birth process, and everyone who ever lived came by them, through them. So God was the creator of the universe. God is the commander of the universe. He has dominion over the universe. And man had dominion over the earth. Man could have learned anything they needed to know about the universe from the Creator himself. But because of this small thing, the pleasure of the eye and the desire of the heart, they sold their birthright off even cheaper than did Esau. I mean, after all, they had riches greater than Esau had. Esau had Israel. They had the whole earth. Now I want to go back to Genesis 2:17. I want to read this over again, and one last point I want to make. Genesis 2:17 says, "But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it. For the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die." Now, I'm bringing this up because some say that this is an error, that God lied here, or God was mistaken, or that the Bible is wrong in stating that here it says that the day they eat of it, they'll die that day. It does not say that. Many commentaries say, "In dying, die," or "In dying, thou shalt die," or "begin to die." It says here, "For in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die." The key word is surely. What he's saying here is that the day that you eat of this, it is a surety that you will die. Because death until then was not in them. They would not have died, but they did die, we know. We also know this is true because we know that they didn't die then. But we do know that they did surely die. Okay, so that's it for today. And thank you very much for watching.